Hi, my name's Colin Jarvis and I'm the Vice President of Stealth Belt Inc. I've had my ostomy since 2014, and in that time, I've done a lot of research on all different types of ostomy appliances and accessories. Today, I want to share with you some of the things that you should know as a new ostomate to learn about how to pick the best types of appliances for you and the different types of accessories you can use to improve your experience with an ostomy. So, here we go. So the first piece of information that you'll want to consider when you're deciding what type of ostomy appliance to use once you've gotten surgery is to decide whether you want a one-piece or a two-piece appliance. To demonstrate using some examples, I've got a two-piece Hollister appliance here and a one-piece Convex appliance. With the one-piece appliances, one of the main things that you're going to have to consider is that because the bag portion and the base plate portion, or where the actual adhesive is, are connected as one, once you put this onto your body, it's going to be there until it's time to change the bag out. So if you're using a one-piece appliance and you're applying it to your body, you'll want to make sure to keep in mind which orientation you'd like to have the bag. With a stealth belt, sometimes wearing the bag totally horizontally is preferable, and so with a one-piece appliance, you'll have to apply it directly in that orientation from the start. By contrast, with the two-piece appliances, you can actually apply the base plate portion of your appliance first, and then apply the bag second and rotate it based on what you prefer throughout your wear time over the few days that you have each of these appliances on. I think ultimately it comes down to personal preference as to whether the one-piece or the two-piece appliances will work best, but here are some of the pros and cons that I've noticed. One of the biggest pros or advantages to the one-piece appliances is that because there's less material and no attachment point, that generally speaking, it's going to be a lower profile. So if you're wearing tight-fitting clothing, the one-piece appliance might actually make your appliance less visible. On the flip side, because you don't have that adjustability component that comes with the two-piece appliances, I feel that sometimes the one-pieces can be a little bit more limiting in how you choose to wear your bag and how it's oriented on your body. For the two-piece appliances, one of the biggest advantages is that ability to move the orientation of the bag, especially if you're using something like a stealth belt where it might be useful to change the direction that the bag's facing. Additionally, one of the big benefits of the two-piece appliances, which is the main reason that I personally choose to use the two-piece appliances, is that a lot of them have what's called a floating flange. And that refers to this little attachment space between the actual circular flange where the bag attaches and the adhesive portion of the appliance. And the reason that that's important is because that helps the appliance actually move kind of a little bit more flexibly and a little bit more independently of the adhesive. And so for somebody like myself who's highly active, I find that added degree of flexibility to be a really big benefit. But of course, if you're using those two-piece appliances, because there is that attachment point and that floating flange, it is going to be a slightly higher stack height, or there's a bit more of a profile there when you're comparing the two options. So if that's a big concern, or if you wear a lot of tight-fitting clothing and the way that it appears underneath clothing is a big concern to you, then again, the one-piece options might actually be preferable. So again, totally personal preference, and both of these options are going to work great to staying attached to your body and reducing the likelihood of leaks. So now that we've discussed some of the differences between the one-piece and two-piece appliances, the next thing that we're going to look at is whether the pouches are drainable or non-drainable. And like the names of these pouches kind of imply, the difference is going to be whether or not there's an emptying mechanism, like in this example here. In this example, I've got a drainable pouch where you've got an opening at the bottom where you can empty the appliance when it fills up, and you can reuse this bag as often as needed during the lifespan of this particular appliance change, which is typically 3 to 4 days. On the other hand, if you're using a non-drainable pouch, just like the name implies, you're not going to be able to empty that bag. So it'll look just like this, but it has that a rounded bottom and no emptying mechanism. If you're wearing a non-drainable appliance and your bag fills up, the way that you typically get rid of it is it's normally going to be a two-piece appliance, so that's probably something to consider. You detach the top portion and just dispose of the bag when it's full, and then you'd replace it with another closed pouch bag and attach it back to the base plate, which stays adhered for that 3 to 4 day span of time. There may be some options that are one-piece non-drainable appliances, and that will just require that you have to, each time you fill up your bag with output, you have to remove the entire system and replace it. And it just comes down to personal preference again, if that is something that you choose to do. When you're making the decision between drainable or non-drainable pouches, there's probably a few things that you'll want to consider. Ultimately, it's going to be whatever you're most comfortable with, but I believe that some of the benefits of the drainable pouches are much better because you don't have to worry about taking as many different bag changes with you, because if you have a non-drainable pouch and you're in a situation where your bag fills up, you need to make sure that you have those backup pouches on you at all times so that you can switch it out when that's needed. And personally, I would find that cumbersome. I'd much prefer to be able to just go quickly empty my bag and move on with my day. But again, personal preferences are different. On the other hand, if you're using a non-drainable pouch where it's a closed pouch, one of the benefits might be that it could be a little bit more sanitary. So if you're worried about making a mess, or maybe you're just not that dexterous with your fingers for whatever reason, and managing the cleaning of the emptying mechanism on a normal pouch is a little bit more challenging, then non-drainable appliances, that's a lot easier of a switch. So again, there are situations where those non-drainable pouches make a lot of sense. Just being somebody who has had an ostomy for such a long time and spoken with so many people, I can say that one of the big recommendations I would give when deciding between drainable and non-drainable pouches is going to be how much food are you eating? Because if you're somebody like me who eats a lot of food throughout the day and has a lot of output, then non-drainable pouches are just not a realistic option. I'm emptying my bag between 5 and 7 times a day, and I can't imagine going through 5 to 7 new bags each time that happens. It would just be a lot more work than I'd be willing to deal with, so the drainable works as a much better option. However, if you're somebody who has limited calorie intake or maybe you just don't have that much output, then the drainable bags can certainly be a great option. So again, just take into consideration your personal situation and what suits your lifestyle. And now I want to move on to another aspect of the different appliances that's worth considering when you're deciding which one's going to be best for you. And that's whether or not your appliance has what's called convexity. So a convex appliance is referring to the shape of the adhesive on the actual base plate. And so the adhesive is what's attaching to your skin. The base plate is what we refer to as this bottom portion of the appliance. So if it's a two-piece, this is the base plate. And what I mean by convexity is this shape right here. So this is an example of an appliance that has convexity. So there's that dome shape that is on the actual adhesive. And what that's meant to do is when you apply it to your body, it's actually going to press the skin in. And that allows for the stoma to protrude a bit further out from the abdomen. This is really helpful for a lot of different reasons, and particularly if you're somebody with a stoma that's a little bit more flesh to the skin, so it doesn't stick out that much. What I've noticed having a stoma for the last 9 years is that often when my stoma is being active, it even goes a bit further into the abdomen, and so having a convexity to kind of push the skin in and allow the stoma to come out as much as possible really helps make sure that the output that comes from the stoma gets into the bag and it doesn't slip underneath the adhesive and create a leak in the seal. I would say, generally speaking, most people that have ostomies and have stomas would be well suited to try a convex appliance. I just find that it works much better with the average type of stoma that's created because again, a lot of times when leaks happen, it's because that stoma is actually going a little bit too far into the abdomen and it's some of the output is just slipping underneath the adhesive. And so this convexity can help prevent that problem. And if you're getting a lot of leaks right around the edge of where the stoma is and it goes through your hole there, the convexity might be the solution you're looking for. It should also be noted that convexity comes in a number of different styles and heights. So you can have deep convexity where it's a much larger bulge, or a little bit more of a shallow convexity where there's still a little bit. I think this one's a good example of that. And it can either be firm convexity where this is a bit harder, or soft convexity where it's a bit softer. And so all of these things are going to be worth kind of considering based on your personal situation and kind of what the skin is like around your stoma and how far that stoma protrudes out of your abdomen. But on the other hand, there are of course the flat barriers which do not have any convexity. It's just a totally flat adhesive surface. This is an example of a Convatec one, but as you can see, there's no bulge, there's no convexity. And for people that have stomas that are already protruding a bit further out from the abdomen, they may not need the added convexity. Or if there are certain people that are, again, very worried about the depth and the profile of the appliances. Sometimes the flatter convexity, the non-convexity or the flatter appliances will actually, again, stay a little bit more flush to the skin. So I think that's probably one of the main benefits of having a non-convex appliance. You know, if you just don't need that convexity or you want to keep things super low profile, the flat barriers are going to be good for that. So now that we've covered some of the fundamental aspects of the actual appliances themselves, I want to cover 3 of the most common types of accessories that people would use. And those are the barrier rings that look like this, the barrier extenders, which look like this, and the barrier pastes that look something like this. And so we'll take a dive into each of these because they serve similar purposes, but they're all slightly different in their own way. So we'll find out. So to start, I'm going to talk about the barrier rings first. And the barrier rings are simply just an added piece of adhesive that's, they vary in thickness, so you can get thicker or thinner versions of the rings. And these work kind of like sealants that go right around the stoma underneath the appliance, between the actual appliance and the skin. And the way I like to conceptualize how these are used is actually as a way to build more convexity. So remember in our last section we talked a little bit about what convexity is and why you might need it. But if you have a barrier ring that you're adding to your appliance, it would go on something like this once you've applied it. And that actually makes for just a higher stack of soft, because this is a nice soft malleable material, more soft convexity. So if somebody like myself where my stoma only sticks out about 1/2 inch from my abdomen, when it's active it kind of sucks in, and I need that extra adhesive and that extra stack height in the convexity, but I want it to be soft so it's not irritable on the skin, and the barrier rings are a great way to do that. So I'm a big fan of the barrier rings. They seem to solve a lot of the most common leaking problems. So if you've never tried a barrier ring, they're definitely worth testing out to see if it works with either your convex or even your flat barriers. You can create your own type of mild convexity, so it's at the smallest level. But highly recommend. These work great for a lot of people. The next accessory on our list that I'm going to talk about is the Stoma Pastes. So this is kind of like a paste where it's again, similar material, similar adhesive makeup to the barrier rings, but it's just like the name says, it's a paste. So it comes out of here a bit like a thick toothpaste or something like that. But the way that this is typically used is to fill in different types of crevices. So a lot of times when people have these surgeries to have stomas put in place, the scar site will cause like a valley in the skin because the way that scar tissue heals is just a little different. Those of you that have it will know exactly what I'm talking about. And what happens sometimes when you're putting an appliance on where there's a scar that kind of runs up your abdomen underneath the adhesive is that becomes a really vulnerable point for more leakage. But that's where the Stoma Paste can come in as a very specific use to fill those gaps and allow for less likelihood of a leak. So if you're somebody who has your stoma located in an area where you've got scarring or the skin is just uneven and there's like one particular point that seems to always cause leaks, the Stoma Paste applied in that specific area can be a really great solution, and I highly recommend you try it if anything I'm saying resonates with you. And finally, the third accessory that's really popular among people who have ostomies is the barrier extenders. And so that's just another piece of adhesive that looks like this, but generally the idea is, just like the name implies, to extend the barrier. So, a lot of times people will use this as kind of a security blanket or a kind of a safety net, just to know if you're gonna be really active, or maybe you're swimming, or you just want to extend the wear time of your bag. Once you've got your appliance put on, you would extend the barrier in the areas where you can go all the way around with multiple extensions, or just in one spot if you have one particular area that tends to get the most leaks. But you put this on to help prevent the appliance, the adhesive, from coming up. And a specific use case that I know happens to me sometimes is often when I'm sweaty or I get in the water, the edges of the adhesive can kind of start to roll up a bit and just come undone. And that's when I can just slap one of these on here and it extends it for an extra day. I get one more day of wear wear time and a little bit more sense of security that this is going to stay attached to my body. So, if you're super active, go in the water a lot, or just want that extra adhesive to make the barrier's extended adhesive even further out, this is a good way to do it. So these are also very popular, and almost anybody with an ostomy occasionally could find good use for something like this. So highly recommend this as well. So those were some of the most fundamental and basic things that you'll need to know when you're first getting set up with your ostomy appliance and working out which combination of accessories and appliances work best for you. I hope you found it helpful. There are a ton of other things out there, and I'll be taking dives more specifically into some of the more niche types of accessories and products, but this should give you a good place to start when you're still figuring out what kinds of adhesives should I use? What's convex? What's a flat barrier? All of this can be really confusing, but after having years of experience talking to other people who use these and using them myself, I can tell you for sure that once you get the hang of it, you'll find that combination and your life will be so much better for it. So take this time to learn about the appliances, test out different things, and find that best solution for you. So best of luck with your ostomy journey moving forward, and thanks again for tuning in to Stealth Belt.